our spineless, fearless leader, Anthony Albanese, chose not to put his hand on the Holy Bible during his swearing-in ceremony. Instead, he chose to reject it completely, and instead he decided to read out a couple of words that he had chosen specifically for such the occasion. Now, when a leader of a nation chooses not to during his swearing-in, and contrast, you had Trump actually put his hand on the Holy Bible during his swearing-in moment, placing his right hand up to basically take the oath, talking about recognizing the authority that God has over mankind and emphasizing the moral weight of that promise. That is what putting your hand on the Bible represents and signifies. But Anthony Albanese decided, no, I don't want to do that, even though he recognizes the difference between church and state, which we all should definitely recognize. There is a major difference. But when it comes down to taking the oath of office, an important office role like leading a country or leading a people group, recognizing that you are insignificant, you are just a man. That's all Anthony Albanese is. As much as people would love to try and worship the ground that he walks on, believe you me, there are people out there that do that. I don't know why, but it's important for everyone to understand that if a man chooses to recognize that he is just a man and he is under the authority of God himself, that is important to recognize, my friends. You've got to understand that there is nothing that you do that God does not see. And as a leader of a country, understanding the weight that you have that is upon your shoulders, God is not going to bless a man or a country that doesn't respect or doesn't serve him, especially if the leader decides to reject him. Now, it's not like for me as a Christian, when I look at this, it's not necessarily just about putting your hand on the Bible and then taking an oath or swearing your loyalty or your fealty to basically doing the right things, doing things that are morally sound. It's more than that. It shows the heart of a person. It shows me as a Christian whether or not this man is actually going to follow Christ and do things that are right in God's eyes. In ancient times, kings, the Bible would talk about kings that walk not in God's righteousness. They chose not to walk with God. They rejected all things God. And as a result, God did not bless their kingdom. The ones that did choose to follow after righteousness, that did choose to follow God, they were blessed. And God recognized their commitment to him. It hasn't changed. Thousands of years later, it has not changed. Kings would have obviously a messenger or a prophet that would come and anoint the next king. That would be in ancient Israel. Now, in today's day and age, we have something rather significant, and that is placing your hand on the Holy Bible. There is a big significance to that, and Anthony Albanese refused to do it. The moral weight of the Bible is associated with morals and ethical principles. Placing one's hand on it adds a moral dimension to the oath, indicating a commitment to honesty and integrity. Now, if Anthony Albanese is refusing to do that, he's showing all of us what we already knew. You're dishonest, you're a slime bag, and you're spineless. And that, to me, also signifies that we're in a lot of trouble. We've got politicians, many of which that are corrupt. And Anthony Albanese is refusing to place his hand on the Bible because he knows the significance and the weight behind that. Everyone does, regardless of whether or not you believe in God. There is significant weight when you claim, and that's the other thing, right? People refuse to place their hand on the Bible because they know its significance. They don't want to be superstitious or any kind of thing like that, but they don't want to invite that into their life, which leads me to go, well, maybe there is something to that, right? But here is Anthony Albanese's response to not placing his hand on the Bible. Have a watch.
I believe in a separation of church and state. So I choose, for example, today I've always chosen to do an affirmation, because I think that as the Australian Prime Minister, I represent people of every faith and no faith. And so that, for me, that's a personal decision. Other people who swear on the Bible or the Quran, in Anne Ali's case, is perfectly up to them. It's a personal choice. But for me, that's a personal choice that I make. And
it's coming from a supposed Catholic, albeit a non-practicing Catholic as well, who I personally is just Catholic because he wants to get the Catholic vote. Politicians are very good with that, right? Same with calling things Islamophobic. They want to get the Muslim vote and want to be on the side of Muslims. And you saying, oh, I'm a prime minister for people that have a religion and those that don't, you end up serving absolutely no one, because you got no moral compass whatsoever. You, just by saying, right, just by saying, I chose to do an affirmation, which shows me that you chose your own pride over humility. That's what it shows me. That's what it signifies. And you can tell, like, he's not for anyone but himself. A real man of conviction, which is what John Anderson and Tony Abbott were talking about in their conversation, which, yes, Albanese has got conviction, but it's the wrong kind of conviction. And we saw that conviction in that video that you just watched. He chose to do an affirmation because that's what he wants to do. That's what he believes. And by the way, swearing on the Quran in Australia, that is also problematic, because the Quran ain't no holy book. I'm just pointing that out. The Bible, however, is definitely a holy book. And if you're swearing on the Quran versus swearing on the Bible, I think we've got a big problem on our hands, because what swearing on the Quran signifies is I am showing you all that I am willing to be a liar, deceitful, corrupt, and I'm going to be worshiping the devil rather than worshiping God. You don't acknowledge the importance of integrity when you're swearing on the Quran, because we know what the Quran entails. And you're also swearing on the fact that the book itself says, okay, I want to unalive Jews and Christians because they're infidels. But Anthony Albanese's refusal to acknowledge God during his swearing in, okay, Anthony, you just wait and see. The next 3 years are going to be the worst 3 years of your miserable life, because God does not bless those that reject him. And like I mentioned a moment ago, you choose to reject the moral integrity that the Bible carries, mate, you're going to end up finding out the hard way. Just saying. Lozzie B goes, swearing on the Quran is swearing to uphold Islamic systems over Australian law. How is this allowed? Exactly. He pretends to be Catholic when it's politically advantageous. A man of no principles is no man. If he refuses not to place his hand on the Bible, then he clearly is hiding something. Saying you represent everyone means you represent no one. Once again, pandering to minorities. We're a Christian-based country, and it's a tradition he should uphold. Just because you've chosen, it's my personal choice not to do it, doesn't make it right, does it? And it just shows, okay, I'm going to set up my office and my next 3-year reign of terror, as it would seem. I am going to be not placing my hand on the Bible, which shows that you're guilty of something. Guilty of lying, guilty of something shameful. Who knows? But anyway, that's enough from me. You guys take care. Be blessed. And I'll see you all in the next video.